aware when this was all happening that the dots were connecting to your patterns and behaviour? Mm-hmm. Did you know that and you just didn't care?
Yeah, it's a great question. I did know that. I was aware, but I almost felt trapped. I started to try certain things like, AA, CA, therapy, things like this, but I don't think I was committed enough.
Deep down, you didn't really want to stop.
Not really, no. I didn't. I think as well, sir. I didn't see a way out at the time because I wanted to continue this career that I'd spent so much time and invested at this point. Maybe 6 years of my life, 7 years into my life. I didn't see any alternative, and the problem is with that is because it was a cycle. It was going to the gigs, facilitating my drug use, having a day off, feeling sorry for myself, maybe going to 1AA, feeling okay again, going in the studio, getting on it again, and that was it was just the complete cycle. But what happened was the lockdowns, and that for me was the best thing that could have happened to me because it sort of forced my hand to change because we lost. Obviously, everything shut down, so we didn't have any gigs, and I didn't have any money because I hadn't put any aside, and my mum and my dad weren't in a position for us to just go and move back with them, sort of thing. So when the lockdowns happened, we were in Berlin. That automatically broke the cycle for me, and I had to get a job. And the only jobs they had because I didn't learn any German. The only jobs they had for non-speaking, non-German speaking individuals was at Amazon. So I had to do Amazon. So it was like the night shift. It was like I think it was like 11 at night till 7 in the morning. But I had literally no other options. It was either that or starve basically. And what had happened as well, just before lockdowns, I couldn't hold a place to live because I kept on getting kicked out of all my apartments. And then if I went into a house share, the same thing would happen. So I was like sleeping either in the studio or on my brother's sofa. And anyway, so I thought, you know what, something's got to change. I'll take the job. But it was great because firstly, I was working the nights. So even on my day off, I was so tired that I didn't want to go out and party. And then what also happened is that I started moving my body again. At this time I was really out of shape. I had a lot of weight around my belly and my hips, had really bad acid reflux. I mean, if you'd looked at me, you could tell that I was getting to that sort of rock bottom moment. I didn't look healthy. And I started to move my body again. And a little bit of weight started to, I lost a little bit of weight, and I was like, okay. And then I knew this tattoo artist, Marcio, and he was like 44, I think. He was in fantastic shape, and he partied a bit. But I remember asking him, this is at a time when I was thinking about training again. I thought maybe this is the key. So Marcio, he used to do intermittent fasting, but I'd never heard of this before. When I was a PT, it was very much, chicken and broccoli. It wasn't not
the
eating.
Kind of thing,
it wasn't. I was thinking
6 times a week, 6 times a day.
6 times a day. That's it. It definitely was not eating. So I was intrigued. I was like, intermittent fasting. I was like, are you sure that's how you look this good at that age? He's like, honestly, I'm telling you. So I thought, you know what? I'll give it a go. And there was an app. I still use the app now to this day called Fastic, Fastic. It was a free app. So he said, look, just give it a go. 16 hours. This is what he told me at first, the classic 16-8. 16 hours not eating, 8 hours eating window. I was like, all right, I'm going to give this a go. So I was at Amazon. I was moving because I was moving. You know what I was doing? I was doing the boxes. So, the boxes would come in and you have to pick them up and put them into the package. Oh, it was a graft. Bearing in mind, I've not done any exercise now for about 7 years. maybe I think when I was in London, I used to sit on the bike for 20 minutes every now and again. So that was a shock. But I started fasting as well. And I started to really read up about it. And I found this Spotify podcast called the Stephen Cabral podcast. And he did a whole section on intermittent fasting. So I started to listen to it. And I don't know how much you know about intermittent fasting, if you've done it before.
Enough. I personally not found it that great for me.
Okay.
But I think that's my own personal journey with, I had an eating disorder.
Okay, yeah, okay.
So it's not, restriction is not the best method for me.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I started listening to the health benefits, but it wasn't the health benefits that I found worked for me. It was the control. That's what I really like, because I'd spent so much of my career, especially in music, out of control. No discipline, no structure. I don't remember what time I used to get up, what time I used to go to bed, what I used to do in the day when I was a DJ. And this is an 8-year span. I couldn't tell you that. People used to ask me, where do you go and eat in Berlin? Bearing in mind, I lived there for 4 years. I have no idea. So starting to fast, it gave me control again. I was like, actually, I'm in control of the decisions that I'm making here every day. And I used to set that fast, and I'd really push it as hard as I could, 17 hours, 18 hours, and I'd break the fast, and I'd be like, yeah, that's a small win there. And then I was moving my body, and then I remember opening up MyFitnessPal again. It had been like 10 years. And I started to track my food, and I had like a period where things were moving in the right direction. Weight was coming down. My body was starting to change. I was feeling more in control. Hadn't like completely knocked the drugs on the head at this point. Every now and again I was still using, still going out, but it was a lot less frequent, and I was a lot more focused on having that routine and structure. So after this, Liam, like my brother, he then started to fast as well. And he was getting the same results from it. And then we started to exercise a bit. So, I started to run a little bit. I remember that first run back was absolutely horrific. I think I did like a K. I was just like, wow. But I persisted with it. I kept going because I was at such a low point. Just to have that feeling again of just being alive without drugs, it was just so powerful. And I thought, you know what, I can do this. And also because I remember how fitness saved me when I was, 16, 17, 18, how it finally gave me that purpose and direction. And then reminding myself of what discipline brought to me when I was in the military, I started to connect them dots a little bit. And things started to move forward. And what happened then is I lost weight. I remember seeing my abs for the first time again. I was like, wow, this is incredible. And then I started to save money. So all the money I was getting from Amazon, because I wasn't spending it all on drugs this time, I was saving so we could move back to the UK. And I moved back to the UK 2021 in July. But then what happened is the lockdowns, everything finished, everything started opening up again. Sorry, I'm talking too much. I've got... So we went on to a new agency, and there was a little bit of hype building around us again. We'd had a couple of releases that had gone quite well. And we got taken on from an agency here in the UK, and it was like David, who runs the agency, is someone that I'd looked up to for years. There were some really cool artists on there. And the idea was that we moved back to England, we go onto this agency, they get us a lot of shows. We were going to work with Darius Sarossi, and we're going to do all his parties. Like, we'd been booked on for 93 Feet East with Moxie with him. And then we got a tour of Australia planned, tour of New Zealand, 10 shows in the UK, loads of releases. But Liam, my brother, was like, look, I'm done, basically, because he had seen how much it pulled us down. And then obviously having that break away from the industry, how we'd grown closer again. And Liam, bless him, he was going through his own, journey with weight gain and depression and drug use as well. but it was sort of overshadowed because mine was so bad. You know, no one was thinking about Liam. It was like, oh, look at Sean, you know, he's doing so well, sort of thing now. And I think Liam knew deep down that going straight back into that environment was only going to bring the same result as it was before. So I remember we moved back to England. We moved to Southampton because I didn't want to move back to London because I knew that I was still on the fence with my drug use. And if I'd moved back to London, it would have been a disaster. So we moved to Southampton because I had like an ex-military friend there, and Liam managed to get a job there. And we went to Bournemouth for the day, and my agent rang me, and he's like, look, Sash Australia's confirmed. We're going to fly New Zealand, 4 shows over there, 4 in Australia. And I was buzzing. I was like, yes, it's back on. Like, I'm going to, you know, DJing is back in. We had like 10 shows lined up. And I remember telling Liam, Australia's in. He's like, Sean, I told you, I couldn't care less. Said, I don't care how much they're paying us, where we're going. I said, I'm out. And we had a big argument. We, you know, if you've been to Bournemouth, it's like a massive long, we like stormed off both the opposite direction. So I rang back my agent. I said, look, Liam's not going to do it. He said, well, don't worry about it. We'll just bill it as the Willers Brothers for now whilst we sort it out with these shows. Now, bearing in mind, no one's made any money from the industry for, you know.
Yeah.
So they've done all this work. And I was like, right, okay, I'm going to do it. And even though I'd made great strides forward, you know, I was looking a lot better. I was feeling a lot better. There was still a lot of work to be done. I wasn't free. You know, I still had a drink and drug problem. But in my head, I thought I was just going to be able to go to the gigs and the shows, not drink or do drugs as much, you know, do it when I choose, and everything was going to be fine. So I had the first gig in Nottingham in 2021, in July. I went there, not going to drink at all. And then I started playing. I thought, I'll have one drink. And then I had another, then a line. And then the next thing I knew, I woke up in hospital. I had a massive gash in my head here, big black eye, blood all over me. Apparently the police had brought me in and found me on the floor and that had like silly amounts of cocaine in my system. So I basically like, nearly overdosed. Wow. And that had escalated within a matter of hours. And I honestly, I could not remember what had happened at all. And I remember I was being really, really aggressive with everyone, like all the staff, like anyone saying anything to me. And I went to I took a moment, went to the bathroom, I just broke down. I was like, what am I doing? You know, just looked an absolute mess. I thought all this hard work that I'd done. I rang my dad, and, you know, ironically, my dad and my brother were out running in the New Forest. And I called him and I was like, look, I'm in hospital. I'm like, you know, in a bad way here. And then my dad said to me, he's like, well, you know what you've got to do? So that next day I rang, you know, my agent, just said I was like, you know, that's it, I'm done. And it cancelled all the shows, you know, put a little status out on my social media, and that was it.